Two-thirds of Gen Z say they know how to build a budget and track their spending, they just haven't actually done it. That number comes from Intuit's 2023 Prosperity Index survey, and it points to something important. The tools an older generation built for personal finance were designed for a world Gen Z never really lived in. This generation grew up tapping a phone to pay for coffee, watching a number on a screen change, never touching a bill or a coin. Money was always invisible, always abstract. So when someone hands them a spreadsheet and says, "Track your budget here," it feels like being asked to map a city they have never walked through. What Gen Z is doing instead is reaching for cash envelopes, color-coded spending boards, and apps that turn their budget into something they can actually see and feel. And a lot of financial commentators are calling that immature or unsophisticated. The real question this episode is going to answer is whether they are right to say that, or whether Gen Z has actually figured out something that spreadsheet culture missed all along. Cash stuffing is a budgeting method where you divide your monthly income into physical envelopes, one for each spending category in your life. Rent goes in one envelope, groceries in another, transportation in another, and so on. The core idea is simple. Once the cash in an envelope is gone, that category is done for the month. You do not borrow from another envelope, and you do not swipe a card to cover the difference. The limit is physical and immediate, not a number buried in a banking app. This creates something that digital spending never really could, a tangible sense of where your money actually lives. When you hand over bills at the grocery store, you feel the envelope getting lighter. That sensation is the whole mechanism. It turns an abstract number into something you can hold, count, and watch disappear in real time. Visual budgeting works on the same principle, but adds a layer of tracking you can see at a glance. Color-coded charts, printed trackers, and progress bars replace rows of formulas. The goal is the same as any budget: spend less than you earn and direct money with intention. But the feedback is immediate and visual, rather than delayed and numerical. The reason this approach works comes down to a concept behavioral economists call the pain of paying. When you hand over physical cash, your brain registers that transaction as a real loss. You feel it. But when you tap a card or click to check out, that friction disappears almost completely, and your spending becomes emotionally invisible. For a generation that grew up entirely inside digital payment systems, spreadsheets have the same problem. Numbers in a cell carry no weight. They do not activate the same mental response as watching your envelope empty out or seeing your savings jar shrink in real time. This connects directly to mental accounting, the well-studied tendency people have to treat money differently depending on how it is categorized and how visible it feels. When your grocery budget lives in a labeled envelope or a color-coded tracker on your wall, your brain assigns it a distinct identity. It becomes real, bounded, and yours to protect. Visual and cash-based systems restore that friction on purpose. They reintroduce the emotional signal that digital finance stripped away. And that signal is not a distraction from smart money management. It is the mechanism that makes the behavior change actually stick. So let's walk through how to actually set this up. Starting with the basics you can knock out today. First, pick your envelope categories. You are not trying to track every dollar of your financial life here, just the spending categories where you tend to lose track. For most people, that is groceries, eating out, fun money, and personal care. Start with 3 to 5 categories maximum. You can always add more later. Second, decide on your cash withdrawal schedule. Most people find weekly or bi-weekly works best, time to match when you get paid. Go to your bank or ATM and pull out only the amount you have budgeted for those categories combined. Nothing more. Third, get your envelopes ready. These can be actual paper envelopes, a budget wallet with labeled slots, or a small accordion folder. Label each one clearly with its category and the weekly amount it is meant to hold. Fourth, divide your cash immediately. Right when you get home, split the money across your envelopes before you spend a single dollar. This one step is what makes the whole system work, because the money becomes visible and finite the moment you hold it. So you have your envelopes labeled and your starting amounts loaded. Here's where most people stumble. The single rule that makes or breaks this system is simple. When an envelope is empty, the spending in that category stops. Not slows down, stops. You do not borrow from next month, and you do not quietly move money from groceries to cover a night out. The envelope is a hard wall, not a suggestion. That friction is the whole point. With a card tap, you feel nothing. With a physical envelope, you feel the limit before you hit it, and that changes how you decide. One thing that helps is doing a quick envelope check every few days, not just at the start of the month. Catching a low envelope on day 12 is useful. Catching it on day 29 is just stress. Now, if you find that your categories are constantly running out before the month ends, That is usually a sign your starting amounts do not reflect your real life. Adjusting them is not failure, it is calibration. We covered exactly how to set realistic starting numbers in episode 5 on zero-based budgeting, so if you're struggling there, that episode is worth a watch. Coming up next, we look at how the digital version of this system works and whether it actually keeps the same psychological advantages. To see how this plays out in real life, consider two hypothetical people with the same starting point. Both earn $3,200 a month after tax. Both have the same fixed expenses. The difference is how they track what is left. Maya uses a cash envelope system. She divides her spending money into labeled envelopes at the start of each month. Groceries, dining out, fun money. When the envelope is empty, she stops spending in that category. By the end of the month, she has redirected $280 in unspent cash directly into savings, almost without thinking about it. Jordan tracks everything in a spreadsheet. The intention is solid, but the friction is high. Updating rows after every transaction feels like homework. So it happens less and less. By the third week, the spreadsheet is already behind. Jordan overspends dining out by $180, does not catch it until the credit card bill arrives, and ends the month with $60 saved. Same income, same budget on paper, a $220 difference in outcomes over 1 month. Not because Jordan is irresponsible, but because the system created too much distance between the decision and the dollar. That is the core insight here. Visibility changes behavior. When money is abstract, spending feels abstract too. When it is physical or highly visual, the feedback loop closes faster. Now, even a great system has weak points, and this one is no exception. Here are 3 ways people quietly sabotage their own cash envelope or visual budget, and how to stay ahead of them. The first is the borrowing trap. You run low on groceries midweek, so you pull a few dollars from the entertainment envelope, telling yourself you will pay it back. You rarely do. Treat each envelope like a separate account. Once it is empty, that category is closed until next month. The second is the reset problem. Life gets busy, you skip a week of sorting, and suddenly the whole system feels behind and too messy to fix. Visual budgets only work with a consistent reset ritual. Same day, same time. Every month. 5 minutes of maintenance prevents a full breakdown. The third is the digital blind spot. You set up beautiful envelopes for cash spending, but your subscriptions, online orders, and tap-to-pay habits stay completely untracked. Your visual system needs a matching digital layer, even a simple running total in your Notes app. Or the invisible spending just moves to a different corner of your life. Plug these 3 gaps early, and the system becomes genuinely durable. Now, a fair question at this point is whether cash envelope budgeting actually holds up on a tight income, or whether it is something that only works once you have enough money to feel comfortable dividing it into categories. The honest answer is that it works best when income is consistent. If you're freelancing, doing gig work, or dealing with irregular paychecks, assigning fixed cash amounts each month gets complicated fast. That is a real limitation, not a workaround. But for anyone on a steady, even modest income, the visual method can be more useful at lower budgets, not less. When every dollar is stretched thin, seeing exactly how much is left in your grocery envelope or your transport envelope removes a layer of anxiety that invisible bank balances tend to create. You are not guessing, you are looking. The practical flaw is simple. You need enough in each envelope to cover one real spending cycle, even if that means starting with just 2 or 3 categories instead of 10. Start narrow. Groceries and fun money are a reasonable pair to begin with. Add categories only when the habit feels natural. Not because a template says you should have 7 envelopes ready on day 1. The system scales down better than a spreadsheet does, and that is worth knowing before you decide it is not for you. So across this series, we have covered everything from zero-based budgeting to the 50-30-20 rule. And what keeps showing up is that the best system is the one that actually matches how your brain works. For Gen Z, that often means making money visible, tangible, and tied to real moments instead of rows in a spreadsheet. Your action for this week: pick one spending category that feels out of control and give it a physical boundary, a labeled envelope, a dedicated jar, a color-coded section in a notebook, anything that makes the limit real before you hit it. Next episode, we are going inside one of the most talked about systems in this space right now, the digital cash stuffing method, where people are taking the envelope system and rebuilding it inside budgeting apps and spreadsheet tools. It is called Cash Stuffing Goes Digital, and it might just be the bridge between old-school tactile budgeting and the tools you already have on your phone. If this series is helping you build a system that actually sticks, subscribing is the best way to catch every episode as it drops. Hit the button and we will see you in the next one.